very...
What if I told you that your modern high-tech tent and $1,000 down sleeping bag would be the cause of your death in a place where people have lived for centuries? Imagine the endless, icy desert of the Great Plains, where the wind, unimpeded from the North Pole itself, accelerates to the speed of an express train. The temperature here drops so low that your breath instantly turns into ice crystals that settle on your face, and any exposed tree explodes with a cannon-like roar from the frozen sap inside. In these conditions, which seem completely incompatible with life to modern man, the indigenous peoples not only survived, but also felt quite comfortable. We are accustomed to thinking that we have conquered nature with central heating and synthetic materials, but in reality, we have only isolated ourselves from it, losing our skills of interaction. True winter does not forgive mistakes, and what we call comfort in the conditions of the wild prairie of the 18th century would have been a death sentence by dawn. Watch the video to the end, and you will learn how ordinary dry grass saved feet from amputation better than modern membrane boots, and why sleeping in clothes was a fatal mistake. Are you ready to learn the truth about the famous Native American dwelling? That it is not a primitive tent made of animal skins? Many people mistakenly believe that a teepee is simply a conical hut covered with bison skin, inside which it is as cold as it is outside. In fact, it is a complex engineering structure that uses the laws of aerodynamics and thermodynamics, which Western architects only began to consider centuries later. The main secret to warmth was not the outer shell, but the inner lining, called an ozon or devcloth, which was attached to poles at human height. It created a double wall effect, familiar to us from modern thermoses, insulating the living space from the icy outside environment. Cold air entering under the lower edge of the outer cover did not get inside the dwelling, but escaped upwards between the two layers of skin, creating a constant draft. This air gap worked as an ideal insulator, preserving the precious heat from the central hearth inside the living area. Thanks to this design, smoke from the fire did not stagnate in the room, but was instantly drawn out through the upper opening, obeying the laws of physics. A modern tourist in his airtight nylon tent would suffocate from carbon monoxide or wake up in a puddle of condensation running down the walls. In a teepee, the air always remained fresh and dry, which was critical for survival in sub-zero temperatures. Humidity is the main enemy in the cold, and the Indians learned to defeat it with proper ventilation rather than airtightness.
The wind howls fiercely tonight.
Yes, but we are dry and warm. The smoke goes up straight.
The cone shape itself was not a random choice dictated by simplicity of construction, but was the ideal solution for windy plains. The cone has unique aerodynamic stability, allowing squalls to flow around the dwelling, pressing it to the ground rather than overturning it. Even during the most violent blizzards, when visibility dropped to zero, the teepees stood unshakable like rocks. The frame poles made of flexible pine did not break under the pressure of the elements, but only sprang slightly, dampening the energy of the wind. Setting up such a dwelling did not require brute force, but rather precise calculation and understanding of the wind patterns of a particular area. The entrance always faced east toward the rising sun, so that the first rays would warm the room and away from the prevailing westerly winds. Mistaking the orientation of the entrance meant condemning the family to heat loss and constant drafts. Inside the teepee, the space was organized with mathematical precision, where every object and every person had their own strictly defined place. This was not the chaos of nomadic life, but a strict order that ensured maximum efficiency in the use of heat. Things were stacked along the walls, creating an additional layer of insulation at the very base, where the cold was most noticeable. Compare this to a modern apartment, where when the heating is turned off, the temperature drops to critical levels in a matter of hours. The nomad's dwelling was an autonomous life support system, independent of external networks. It is important to understand that comfort here was achieved not by the power of the heat source, but by the efficiency of its conservation. The bison hide covering underwent a complex tanning and smoking process that made the skin waterproof but breathable. It did not stiffen in the cold, remaining soft and flexible, which allowed the tension to be adjusted and the smoke vents to be closed. While modern fabrics become brittle and fragile in severe cold, bison leather only became stronger. It is this technological gap between understanding nature and trying to isolate ourselves from it that makes our modern ideas of comfort inapplicable in the wild. We build walls to keep out the cold, while they build air currents to control the heat. I wonder how you feel about this topic. Would you trust your life to a structure made of skins and sticks in -30 degrees? Write about it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next reviews. Want to know a secret that will change your life if you find yourself in the forest in winter? When modern people find themselves in a winter forest, the first thing they do is try to build a huge bonfire, like the ones pioneers used to build, believing that the bigger the fire, the better their chances of survival. This is a fundamental mistake, which in the real winter conditions of the plains would lead to rapid death from hypothermia. The Indians of the Great Plains knew that a huge fire requires a tremendous amount of firewood, which must be constantly gathered in the forest, wasting precious energy. In addition, a large fire creates a powerful draft that literally sucks warm air out of the dwelling and draws in cold air from the street. Instead of a roaring flame, a small, modest, but very effective hearth was maintained inside the winter dwelling, which burned constantly and evenly. The secret lay in the use of a certain type of wood that gave off a lot of heat, but did not shoot sparks. Sparks were deadly dangerous, as they could burn through precious skins, tires, or sleeping bags, compromising the shelter's airtightness. Most often, dry poplar or willow was used, which could be found in the floodplains of rivers crossing the plains. This small hearth created a column of warm air that rose upward and, reflecting off the sloping walls of the teepee, returned downward, creating heat circulation. This was the principle of a convection oven, where heat was evenly distributed throughout the living space. The stones lining the hearth acted as heat accumulators, storing energy during the day and releasing it at night. Modern people are used to heat coming from a battery or heater, and it does not need to be controlled. In a winter camp, controlling the fire was an art that was learned from early childhood. It was necessary to know how to add wood so as not to create a smoke screen, but also not to let the coals cool down. Smoke was no less a problem than cold, and an incorrectly built fire could drive the inhabitants out into the frost in a matter of minutes. The smoke valves at the top of the teepee were adjusted from the outside with long poles, catching the slightest changes in the wind. This required constant attention and sensitivity, which city dwellers completely lack. The location of people around this tiny source of life was also important. The most honorable and warmest places were opposite the entrance, behind the fire. The elderly and heads of families slept there, receiving maximum radiant heat from the fire and heated stones. The places at the entrance were the coldest, and they served as a kind of vestibule where firewood and equipment were stored. When modern people try to warm themselves by moving close to a large fire, they end up roasting in front and freezing in the back. The Native American heating system was designed to warm the air and objects, creating a soft, enveloping heat. You didn't feel the heat, but you didn't feel the piercing cold either, as you were in a state of thermal balance. Why do you think the skill of building a safe and effective fire without special tools has been lost in our time? What I'm about to show you is banned in 12 countries as unsanitary, but it is precisely this that has saved the lives of entire peoples. We are used to sleeping in individual sleeping bags or under separate blankets, valuing our personal space and privacy. However, in extreme cold, isolation is a sure path to death, as the human body alone cannot generate enough heat to keep warm. Bison hides became a real lifesaver for indigenous peoples, who use them not just as blankets, but as a complex thermoregulation system. Bison hide is a unique natural material with a thick, curly undercoat that traps a huge amount of air. Unlike modern synthetic fibers, which flatten under the weight of the body and lose their properties, Bison fur retains its elasticity. Native Americans slept on thick bedding made of hides laid fur side up and covered themselves with the same hides, but with the fur on the inside. This created a sandwich effect where a person was inside a fur cocoon, completely isolated from the outside environment. But the main secret to survival at night was collective sleeping, which seems strange to us. The whole family lay down under one huge canopy sewn from several skins, huddled close together. The heat of several human bodies combined, creating a microclimate under the canopy, with a temperature significantly higher than the temperature in the dwelling itself. Children were placed in the middle, between adults, where it was warmest, ensuring their survival. The elderly also occupied places closer to the center, while the most resilient warriors could sleep on the edge. There is a common myth that Native Americans slept in their fur clothing so that they would be ready for battle at any moment. In fact, sleeping in outer clothing in such conditions is a gross mistake, leading to poor circulation and moisture condensation. Before going to bed, they took off their moccasins and outer jackets, remaining in their undershirts or leggings, allowing their bodies to breathe. If you go to bed in a modern winter jacket, you will inevitably sweat, and the moisture accumulated in the insulation will turn your clothes into an icy shell by morning. Natural materials and proper organization of the sleeping quarters allowed moisture to evaporate without cooling the skin. In the morning, it was enough to simply shake the skins to get rid of the frost that had settled on the outside of the pile. You may find the idea of sleeping huddled together with your whole family wild, but that is the price of life in an icy hell. Like this if you also value the warmth of your blanket more than privacy on a frosty night. Are you ready for the shocking truth that the most expensive trekking shoes are no match for a bunch of dry grass? Modern man is convinced that the best protection against the cold is a thick sole, a Gore-Tex membrane, and synthetic insulation. However, when actively moving, the foot in such a boot begins to sweat, the membrane stops working, and moisture remains inside. As soon as you stop, wet socks turn into an ice pack, guaranteeing frostbite in half an hour. The indigenous peoples of North America used a completely different approach based on vapor permeability and natural replaceable insulation. Their footwear, moccasins made from bison, deer, or elk skin, was soft, light, and completely non-waterproof in the modern sense. The secret to warmth was not in the leather itself, but in what they stuffed inside the shoes before going out into the cold. They used dry, soft grass, certain types of sedge, or even bison wool, creating an insulating layer around the foot. This grass worked as an ingenious, natural adsorbent, absorbing all the moisture released by the skin while walking. The foot remained dry and warm, surrounded by an air cushion of dry stems that did not conduct cold from the ground. In the evening, when he returned to his dwelling, the Indian simply shook the wet grass into the fire or dried it, and in the morning he stuffed his moccasins with a fresh batch. It took a minute and cost nothing, unlike attempts to dry modern boots by the fire. Have you ever tried to dry wet winter boots while hiking? Most likely you will simply burn them or melt the soles, but they will remain wet inside. The soft sole of the moccasin allowed you to feel the terrain and actively work your foot, which stimulated blood circulation. In stiff modern boots, the foot is immobilized, blood circulates less efficiently, and the foot freezes much faster, despite the thick layer of insulation. Blood circulation is the only internal source of heat, and blocking it with tight shoes is tantamount to killing yourself.
The survivalist stuffs dry grass into their moccasins, ensuring warmth and insulation against the cold.
This simple life hack with grass is still used by experienced survivalists when they find themselves in critical situations. But are you ready to learn how diet affects your ability to tolerate cold from within? In the next chapter, we will discuss fuel for the body. The main weapon against the cold was not clothing or a fire, but metabolism, accelerated to maximum speeds by a special diet. In extremely low temperatures, the body expends a tremendous amount of energy just to maintain a body temperature of 36.6 degrees Celsius. The modern diet, rich in carbohydrates and sugars, provides a quick burst of energy that fades just as quickly, leaving a person exhausted and freezing. The diet of the Great Plains and northern tribes changed dramatically in winter, with an emphasis on animal fats and proteins. The staple of the winter diet was pemmican, a concentrated mixture of dried and powdered bison meat mixed with rendered fat and sometimes berries. It was perhaps the most calorie-dense and energy-rich food ever created by humans before the invention of sports nutrition. A fist-sized piece of pemmican could provide a warrior with energy for a whole day of hard travel through deep snow. Fat is a slow fuel that burns slowly and evenly in the body, providing stable internal heating for many hours. The Indians intuitively understood the biochemistry of the process. Without enough fat in the diet, a person in the cold begins to burn their own muscles and quickly weakens. In winter, fat consumption increased significantly. It was eaten in its pure form, added to soups and rubbed on the body. Soups were made rich from bone marrow, which is a real concentrate of nutrients and energy. Hot, fatty food before bedtime was a guarantee that the body would be able to generate heat throughout the long, cold night. Constant exposure to the cold triggered the activation of so-called brown fat in the body. This is a special tissue that is designed not to store energy, but to burn it and release heat. Modern city dwellers have virtually no brown fat due to their warm living conditions, but the Indians had developed it to the maximum. What if I told you that snow can keep you warmer than a wool blanket? For modern people, a snowdrift is a source of cold and dampness, a place to be avoided at all costs. However, for peoples living in subarctic climates and in the northern plains, snow was an excellent building material and insulator. It consists of ice crystals and air, and it is this air, trapped in the structure of snowflakes, that does not conduct heat well. In winter, Native Americans often covered the bottom of their teepees with a thick layer of dense snow, creating an additional windbreak. This was called a zavalinka, and it reliably sealed the gap between the ground and the roof of the dwelling. Such a snow wall could reach a meter in height, turning the lower part of the dwelling into a real fortress. In more northern regions or during temporary stops, hunters built shelters consisting entirely or partially of snow, similar to an igloo or a quinzhee. Inside such a snow house, the temperature could be kept around 0 degrees Celsius solely by the heat of human bodies and a small oil lamp, even if it was minus 40 degrees outside. A difference of 40 degrees was provided by just a layer of compressed snow. Snow was also used to clean clothes and skins. Dry, frosty snow absorbed grease and dirt perfectly, acting as an abrasive and dry cleaner. Skins rolled in the snow and beaten out became fresh and regained their insulating properties. In conditions of water scarcity, snow was the only way to maintain hygiene. Do you think you could build a shelter out of a material that you are used to thinking of as cold? One of the main paradoxes of survival in the cold is the rule: if you sweat, you die. For modern people, accustomed to the concept of dressing warmly, this sounds strange, but it is overheating that is the hidden killer. Native American clothing was designed to avoid moisture buildup at all costs, providing ideal ventilation for any activity. The traditional costume of the plains dwellers consisted of several layers that could be easily combined. A soft suede shirt, leggings, trousers attached to the belt, and a loincloth formed the base. On top, they wore a cape or parka made of bison hide with the fur on the inside, which kept them warm but did not block evaporation. Swede or buckskin, deerskin tanned using a method of fat rendering and smoking, has unique properties. It is windproof but permeable to vapor. Unlike modern synthetic jackets, which create a greenhouse effect, suede allows the body to breathe across its entire surface. During intense work, running, chopping wood, cutting up carcasses, Native Americans could take off their outer skins and remain in light shirts to avoid sweating. The absence of blind seams and the loose fit of the clothing in key areas, armpits, neck, ensured natural air circulation. Modern jackets with zippers and cuffs seal a person in, and as soon as they walk at a fast pace, their back becomes wet. In the wild, it is almost impossible to dry thermal underwear on your body, and moisture begins to take away heat 25 times faster than air. Native Americans never wore cotton or linen underwear, which absorbs moisture and keeps it close to the body. Their underwear was their own skin, or the thinnest suede, which dried quickly from body heat. This system worked flawlessly for centuries until Europeans brought wool blankets and cloth clothing, which often caused illness. The ground in winter is an endless drain that sucks away your heat. Lying on the bare ground, even in a sleeping bag, is a sure way to get kidney inflammation or hypothermia in a couple of hours. The floor was never just trampled earth. It was a multi-layered construction designed to break contact with the icy surface. The first layer laid on the ground was thick mats made of willow twigs. Willow is a unique tree. Its branches are elastic, and an air layer is created between them. Such a mat lifted the inhabitants above the frozen ground, creating a ventilated space underneath. Old coarse skins that were no longer suitable for clothing, or mats woven from reeds and cattails, were laid on top of the willow mats. The stems of these plants have a tubular structure filled with air, which makes them an excellent natural insulator, similar to modern polyurethane foam. Only on this base were soft bison skins laid for sitting and sleeping. The result was a layer cake several centimeters thick, which completely blocked the cold coming from the ground. In such a dwelling, it was possible to walk barefoot or in light moccasins without feeling the icy cold on your feet. The space around the hearth was often lined with flat stones, which heated up and acted as underfloor heating. Some tribes practiced deepening the floor of the dwelling half a meter into the ground, using the geothermal properties of the soil. Below the freezing level, the temperature of the earth is always higher than the temperature of the air at the surface, which provided additional degrees of warmth. While the nomadic tribes of the plains relied on the mobility of the teepee, sedentary peoples such as the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Iroquois built veritable winter fortresses. The earth lodges of the upper Missouri peoples were giant domes covered with a thick layer of earth and turf. The walls could be up to half a meter thick, creating the effect of an upside-down cellar.
The thick, earth-covered walls protect against the winter cold. This construction creates a strong barrier.
Earth has enormous thermal inertia. It cools slowly and smooths out temperature fluctuations. Inside such an earth lodge, where up to 20-30 people lived, and sometimes the best horses were kept, the temperature never dropped below comfortable levels, even when an Arctic storm was raging outside. The warmth of human and animal breath, plus a central hearth, turned the earth lodge into a thermostat. The entrance to such a dwelling was often equipped with a long tunnel vestibule hung with heavy bison hides. This airlock prevented the wind from entering the living area directly and created a buffer temperature zone. The architecture was so sturdy that people often sat on the roofs of dugouts, observing the surroundings. In the Northeast, the Iroquois built their famous longhouses out of elm bark, which housed several families of the same clan. Although bark is a less effective insulator than earth, the heating system here was unique. A series of fires along the central axis of the house created a thermal curtain. The compartments for families located along the walls received heat but were protected from drafts by bunks raised high above the ground. The density of the population played into their hands. The fewer cubic meters of air per person, the easier it was to heat them. Cramped but cozy, that's the principle of winter survival. Solitude in such conditions was a luxury that no one could afford. However, such stationary dwellings also had their drawbacks. Dampness and smoke could become a problem with poor ventilation. Therefore, the roofs had complex systems of movable bark valves, which were controlled with long poles to regulate the draft. Winter is not only cold, but also endless darkness, confined space, and sensory deprivation. For a modern person, a month in one room with 10 relatives without the internet would be a recipe for a nervous breakdown. But for Native Americans, winter was a time of winter counts, a period for passing on history and traditions and strengthening social bonds. Psychological resilience was as important as physical resilience. Long evenings were filled with storytelling, legends, and myths. It was not just entertainment, it was a school, library, and theater all rolled into one. Elders passed on survival skills, moral norms, and tribal history to younger generations in the form of fascinating stories.
Through these legends and myths, we pass on the skills of survival and the history of our people.
The storyteller's voice, accompanied by the howling wind outside, created a special trance-like state that relieved anxiety and tension. People felt part of something bigger than just a group of survivors in the snow. The sense of community and belonging to the clan provided a powerful dopamine boost, preventing depression. Manual labor did not stop for a minute, repairing equipment, decorating clothes with porcupine quills, making arrows. Fine motor skills calmed the nervous system, and the result of the work brought satisfaction. Idleness was considered a disease that opened the gates to the evil spirits of despondency. Games and competitions inside the dwelling also helped to relieve physical tension. Gambling with dice, guessing hidden objects, all this kept the mind alert and the zest for life alive. Laughter was the best medicine for the winter blues, and the ability to joke was valued as much as the ability to shoot accurately.
Yes, look at that!
Incredible. Beaten again.
Spiritual life, prayers and rituals structured time, preventing the days from merging into a gray mass. Each morning began with gratitude for the night that had passed and a greeting to the sun. This created a positive mood and confidence that the world was not hostile, but simply harsh. We have seen that the survival of indigenous peoples in winter is not a miracle or a coincidence, but the result of a complex system of technology, knowledge, and social organization. Double-walled teepees, proper nutrition, layered clothing, and psychological support are all links in the same chain. Remove one link and the chain will break, condemning a person to death. Compared to them, we modern people seem surprisingly fragile, dependent on external sources of energy and comfort. We have forgotten how to read nature, use simple laws of physics, and trust our own bodies. Their experience reminds us that true sustainability lies not in gadgets, but in our minds and our ability to adapt. The history of Native American winter life is a textbook of ingenuity in conditions of resource scarcity. It teaches us to respect the cold, not fear it, and to find solutions where others see only problems. Perhaps one day this forgotten knowledge will once again become relevant to humanity. Which fact about the winter life of Native Americans impressed you the most? Using grass instead of socks, or sleeping with the whole family under one skin? Share your opinion in the comments, and if you want to see a video about how they obtain food in the snowy desert, write about it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel.